It was the 999th year of the Holy Era, and Rio had finally made it to the World Tree. Latifah ran to hug him right away, and during dinner he told them about the family he met and all the things he learned about his background. The elders wondered how long he's going to stay here, and Rio revealed that it'll only be for 4 more minutes of this recap because their village is the most boring part of the series. Never mind, this has become the most plot-filled part of the story. The girls wonder why 02 is laying on top of him, and Latifah wonders how the f she's in this anime. But Rio doesn't have any idea himself, so he asks her how she came here. The girl opens her eyes and says she's a spirit, the one who formed a covenant with Haruto. She sits on his bed, but all of her memories appear to have been erased. She has no memory of any of the times they've been together and doesn't even know her own name, but wants him to name her. She tells him that she exists for him, calling him Haruto. The girls wonder why she's been calling him Haruto, and Rio tries to buy some time to come up with some bullshit excuse. He tries telling her to call him Rio, but she begins communicating telepathically with him and says she knows everything about him, even the number of sperm cells circulating at any given time, because she's going to suck them out. The girls tell him to ask Lady Dryas about her appearance, so Rio tells her to get up, but sees the greatest plot in all of anime. With her magical abilities, she changes her outfit. While gracefully standing, Rio notices the beauty emanating from her, reminiscing about me. He decides to name her Aisha because the image of spring appeared in his head when he looked at her. The girls think her name is beautiful, and Latifah wonders if this would make them sisters. Back at the village council, the Lady Dryas appears and finds it a mystery that Aisha had lost all of her memories, so she asks Aisha what type of elements she's best at. Aisha says she's mastered all of them, especially the sloppy toppy technique, shocking the entire room. To demonstrate her ability, they head outside so they could determine the power of her abilities. Rio throws a rock to begin the match. Immediately, Aisha vanishes towards him, and he narrowly evades. Her kicks match Rio's techniques, and she parallels all of his movements in close combat, so he backs off to build some distance. He leaps towards the sky to try his aerial tactics, but her strength nearly breaks his arm off. As soon as he landed, he casted icicles towards her, but she disappeared and reappeared behind him, casting her own icicles towards him. She continued mirroring all of his techniques, so Rio eventually casted a tornado. However, she casted one spinning in the opposite direction, and the Lady Dryas ended the match before they destroyed the village. They now believe that Aisha truly has mastery over all the elements, but the Lady Dryas says she will begin teaching Aisha how to control her powers. The elders welcome her to their village, and she thanks them. They hold a festival to welcome her, and she begins learning how to control her magic with Rio. After a short while, Dominic shows him the portable house he's built, and Rio is glad that he's finally going to f*** out of this village. Latifah is saddened when hearing those words, and while the other girls walked away, one of them begged him to spend some time with his little sister before leaving, so they decided to do it the same way all siblings do in an anime, inside the f***ing hot tub. Last time this didn't end well. Latifah wonders why Aisha kept calling him Haruto, so Rio reveals that it used to be his name before he reincarnated. She was excited when hearing that, because she used to take the school bus, and he was the person that she wished could be her brother every day. Rio wonders if that meant she was in the bus crash with him, and her silence reveals the truth. But as sad as it may be, she's glad she was right about him being the best brother. He promises that he'll come back to her once he's done, so she asks him if there's anywhere else he needs washing.
What do you mean by that?
The following morning, the elders give him some gifts before departing. One of them is a compass that will always point back to this village, and the other gives him a device that will allow him to change his hair color so he can remain undercover wherever he travels. Before leaving, Rio asked for the others to take care of Latifah while he was gone, and took off. While they flew away, Rio told Aisha that they're headed to see Celia because he hasn't been able to communicate with her. Inside the capital, Celia was staring at the letter Rio left for her, and wishes she could just talk to him once more. But Charles has finally found her, and asks her if she's been preparing for the night when they will finally be united. In the year 1000 of the Holy Era, Rio was finally back inside the town he grew up in, and activated the device so he could change his hair color. Throughout the night, he tried sneaking into the school he used to attend, and went down to the basement so he could enter Celia's study room. All the memories of the last time they saw each other resurfaced, but after he confidently entered the room, he noticed that it was completely empty. Wondering what could have happened to Celia, Rio decided that they should cast an illusion onto a different researcher and ask them what happened. Inside a random professor's room, Asia appeared from behind and casted a hypnotizing spell onto him. Rio walked in and asked about Celia's location, so the man revealed that she's inside the royal palace. Tomorrow is her wedding ceremony, and the man she will be marrying is Lord Charles, the same man who tormented Rio throughout his childhood. After their kingdom suffered a crushing defeat to the Proxia Empire, the House of Duke Arbor barely managed to commence negotiations of peace, and the head of their house was Charles. The old royal family was forced to flee the capital, and Charles chose to unite his power with the House of Clare. But in order to do so, Celia must be married off to him. After extracting all the information he was looking for, Haruto left and wondered what to do about her political marriage. Their only option would be to infiltrate the castle to meet with Celia just one more time. So Asia told him she will locate her room. As Rio looked down, he noticed all the security, but managed to sneak around towards her room. Inside, Celia prepared to become someone's property for the rest of her life. She opened her drawer, and her last wish was to see Rio just one more time. But after all these years, she had lost hope in ever seeing him again, and drew the letter towards the flame. The door creaked open, and Rio told her to be quiet, revealing that he had finally came to see her, just as he promised. Without a second thought, she ran towards him and hugged him, feeling like it's not a dream anymore. He told her that he missed her, and she noticed that he's grown taller, but Rio said she's just as flat as ever.
No, that one there was a violation. Personally, I wouldn't have it.
She screamed at him for still being a bitch after all this time, but she's glad to see how strong and gallant he's become. She began preparing tea so they could drink it just like they always used to, but Rio asked her about the marriage, wondering if it's truly something she wanted, especially since the man she's going to marry was Charles, the evil man who tortured Rio. She tries to pretend that she's wished for this marriage, saying that Charles is chivalrous and kind towards women, but Rio knows she's lying. However, she yells at him to marry her instead if he thinks she's lying, and to take her somewhere far away, and to spend the rest of his life with her. Those words shock Rio, but she goes on to say that she was just joking, and begs him to forget what she just said. She tells him not to come to the ceremony because it would be embarrassing, and tells him to leave before the guards arrive. She drags him out of the room, and collapses after she closed the door. Once he left the castle, Celia thought she was glad that he kept his promise, but she knew that she couldn't let him get caught up in this. Above the castle, Rio began wondering how he could discover the true purpose of this marriage, and Asia promised to help him. Rio apologized for always having her help him, but Asia promised that she will always be by his side, and that he can come to her if he ever needs anything. The following morning, Charles greeted Rias after his long travels, saying he wished he could have provided him with a proper welcome. He even offered to let him stay the night at his home, but Rias said he's not the one getting married tonight. As he let those words out, he felt a powerful spirit's presence, and excused himself to investigate it. Celia prepared herself to become someone's doll for the rest of her life, and left her tent for Charles to see. He put his arms around her, telling her not to worry if she's nervous, because his 7 other wives will teach her everything she needs to know. After he left, the first wife, Tennisina, explained that she will make things clear from the start. Regardless of her higher status, she will be nothing but a tool for them, and will obey every single one of their commands. Celia tries to say that she understands, and Tennisina goes on to make fun of her appearance and calls her ugly. But Celia continues trying to hold a smile on her face. The maid runs to inform Celia that Princess Christina has arrived, and Christina notices the awful attitude the other wives were giving her, so she asks to have a private conversation with Celia. After Cinderella's stepsisters left, the 2 girls began drinking tea together. Christina is glad that they've finally met one another again, but apologizes for how incompetent her royal family was. It was all their fault that Celia was forced into this marriage, and feels sorry that she stole her smile away. When she attended the academy, there wasn't a day that Celia didn't smile, but now she's like a bird locked inside a cage. So Christina promises that if there's anything Celia ever wishes for, she will do everything in her power to make it possible. Charles walks around with Alfred, the strongest warrior in the entire nation, but says it's unfortunate for him. Now that Charles has gained the supreme ruler position, he will control the entire military for his marriage, and tells him to know his place. The wedding finally began, and the entire nation was filled with joy as the parade commenced. But there was one person who didn't smile, and it was Celia. Charles held onto her hand, saying he couldn't wait until they deepened their relationship tonight. This was all part of his plan to one day rule the kingdom. While they drove by, Asia noticed that Rio was calm, even when preparing to face an entire nation. But he told her that she was the only thing saving his nerves from collapsing. Celia's carriage finally approached them, and Asia left to talk with Celia using her telepathy. She told Celia to remain calm, and revealed that she's Rio's spirit, and that he's watching her among the crowd. Seeing his face made her smile, but the tears she was fighting finally came out. He was the one person she didn't want seeing this, but Charles panicked and wondered why she began crying. She told him that so many feelings swelled up at once, and that she was overcome with joy about their marriage becoming a reality. As she looked back, Rio had disappeared, and none of her communications reached Asia. She wondered if all of it was just a fantasy. This will be her new life, and she's going to be a doll forever. But as she reached out to hold his hand, Rio came running among the crowd. He began knocking all the guards out of his way, and even though the entire military tried blocking him, he casted his wind magic to blow them all out of his way. The mages prepared their photon bullet abilities, but he managed to dodge every single one of their attacks and flew right over them. The military began panicking and used all of their mana, but Charles tried comforting Celia, saying that they're the strongest officers in the entire nation. He continued spewing shit while Rio clapped every single one of their cheeks and ran forward to deliver a devastating punch to Charles's gut. He had finally been reunited with Celia, so the first thing he did was hold a knife towards her neck. While everyone was frozen in place, he began telepathically communicating with Celia, telling her that this was part of his plan. Charles began struggling, but Rio told him to be quiet before he crushed his spine in front of everyone here. He promised Celia that this is all an act. The only reason he's fighting the entire kingdom is because he wanted to ask her one last time if this marriage was her will. She told him that she's already agreed to this marriage, but Rio asked her once more if this was truly her will. He's realized that she was probably threatened into this marriage, and promised that if she wished for it, he would put an end to this wedding right now. She calls him a control freak, but he told her that he's a dominant straight out of 50 Shades of Grey. To him, she means the entire world, and can't stand losing what's important for him because he'd regret it for the rest of his life. He'd already experienced it once before, and knows that he can't ever get back what he's lost. There's still time for her to change, because the future he sees for her will be one filled with misery underneath a selfish imbecile. He asked her once more if this marriage made her happy, and she went on to say that her own feelings may cause problems for everyone else, so she doesn't know if it would still be right. Rio doesn't know the right choice either, but if this wedding was truly the right choice, then she wouldn't have this sad look on her face. He promises once more that he'll make her wish come true as long as she doesn't give up. She asked him what he would do if she didn't want to get married, so Rio revealed that he would take her and run away from this kingdom. It would appear as if he kidnapped her, so her family would never be held responsible, and everything would be at peace. However, she was worried they would catch him, but Rio promised that he would make her wish come true, and said he will become the one who teaches her anatomy tonight. After she heard those words, Celia confessed that she wants him to take her away. Those words were everything Rio wanted to hear, and screamed to the entire nation that he will abduct Charles's bride in order to humiliate him. He hugged tightly onto Celia and leaped into the sky. Her father was worried about her, but she tried smiling to let him know that she would be fine. Charles commanded the troops to run after him, but Alfred came from behind to stop them from breaking formation. However, they didn't listen to his words since he wasn't in charge, and Rio was able to jump over all of them with ease. Alfred told him that he fell right for his trap, and called him an idiot for not predicting that from the beginning. The mages launched photon bullets towards him, but Rio blocked every single one of the attacks with his wind arts. Rios noticed that he was the same person who used Spirit's arts years ago, so he decided to launch a powerful blow towards him. But Rio blocked it with ease. After the dust settled, he began running, and griffins tried tailing him. Charles began screaming at the army, but Alfred said that he will be in charge of the military to make sure the kidnapper doesn't go away. Charles screamed that it was Alfred's fault for letting the man get away, but Alfred asked him if he had any connection with Celia's kidnapper. Charles thought it could be someone who hated him, so Alfred said they've narrowed the suspect down to every citizen in this nation. Charles got clapped and screamed at Alfred to take care of this issue already. Rios wished he could get involved in this interesting turn of events, but with everyone's caution, it would be suspicious if he managed to slip away. Rio continues running over the homes, and warns Celia that he will be running faster to escape the griffins. She thought the vibration from his leg strokes were rough, and told him that he can go faster just for now. After a while of them chasing him, Rio leaped down into an alley and handed Celia off to Asia. He told Celia that he was planning on distracting the army while she escaped with Asia, but promised that he would catch up with them outside of the kingdom. He leaped above the homes, but when the soldiers noticed that Celia was missing, they launched a signal flare for the other soldiers to surround the area. However, this was all part of his plan, and he wanted to draw the attention of the entire army to this area. The mages began firing down towards him once more, but Rio managed to dodge all of their attacks as he leaped from building to building. The soldiers from below tried preventing Celia from escaping, but Rio leaped down and began knocking them out one by one with his legs. The rest of the army appeared, and the griffins continued raining their magical attacks toward him. While he was distracted, 2 soldiers tried fighting him, but Rio took care of them with ease and began holding off their entire army. After he'd eliminated everyone standing in his way, Alfred appeared, and Rio remembered exactly who that man was. He told all of the troops to clear the area before they were harmed, and faced off against Rio. Immediately, he rushed forward, but he barely managed to hold off Rio's attacks. Even with his speed, Alfred wasn't able to land a hit onto him. But Rio noticed that his sword was enchanted with a powerful spell that shook the ground beneath him. His superior martial arts allowed Rio to gain the upper ground, but he continued barely surviving. However, Alfred took a step back and rushed forward, nearly piercing Rio's eyes out with his speed. But Rio spun around to leverage his momentum into his attacks, and striked him with his fist. Alfred was confused why his opponent wasn't using his knives, but promised to put an end to this fight. The only thing that remained where Rio stood was rubble, and Alfred knew that his strike would have burnt him to a crisp. But he had an odd feeling that his strike didn't make contact, so he sent the rest of the soldiers to look for him. Meanwhile, Celia was worried as she waited for Rio, but even Asia hesitated because of the gloomy air. However, Rio appeared, and Celia began running towards him but tripped onto him. Rio said her fall would have had more cushion if she grew in the important areas. Even though he roasted her, she was glad that she was finally going to live dedicated by her own will. But after she let those words out, magical beams began gushing towards the heavens from every part of the world. Asia felt a piece of her returning, and begged Rio to go and help the people waiting there. A group of 3 had landed in this world, and noticed that their cell phones had no service. A giant thug appeared from behind them, and they took them away inside their carriage to sell them off as slaves. Rio made it to the scene and asked one of the merchants if he's seen a similar device somewhere. But after he lied by saying he didn't, Rio heard girls screaming Japanese inside the carriage. They begged him to help them, so Rio neutralized every single one of the men standing in his way, and let the girls out. The last one was stuck in a different carriage, so Rio went to break the lock. The one person who turned towards him was the same person he'd made that promise to. It was me, the girl he'd devoted his entire life to meeting.